Today's class is all about improving your posture. So just at the very beginning, what I'd like you to do is just have a think about if you someone said to you, what do you need to do to have good posture? What makes you have good posture? So whether you're walking around in your space that you're doing this class in, or you're just thinking about it, think about things that you actively do to contribute towards good posture. So for me, it's the first thing I think about is lengthening the spine. So I think about lifting the top and the back of the head up, all the way up to the ceiling, sending the tailbone down a little bit, so I've created a bit of space in between each vertebrae. Eyeline is lifted, as opposed to looking down all the time, which is a really bad habit. Someone said earlier in class about pinning the shoulders back, so we feel like we're lifting the chest. What else? Yeah, someone said about being conscious of how the arms swing, and whether they're just nice and relaxed and hanging from the shoulders. So yeah, thinking about things that improve our posture. So in class today we're going to talk about those things, and we're going to do some exercises which will help with all of those things. Let's think about the feet for the moment to start with. So just taking some foot drills, and I've kept my lovely white socks on, not because I wanted to do a Michael Jackson tribute this evening, more because I wanted you to be able to see really nice and clearly. So I'm going to go up and down my yoga mat. We're going to start with walking very pigeon-toed, so turning the thighs inwards at the tops of the thighs, touching the toes together and noticing how it makes you feel. So we just talked about keeping that eyeline lifted all the way. So try not to look down at your feet. Once you've set that position on the feet, try and keep the head lifted, and see if you can notice what the things the changes in your body. So for me, it makes me feel a little bit rounded, a little bit imploded. I'm aware of my sacroiliac joint. But apparently rolling the thighs in this position will open up that joint, so maybe not necessarily a bad thing. And then let's go the other way. Let's turn the feet out. So for me, having been ballet trained from the age of 10, immediately when I turn my legs out and I walk around as if I've just stepped out of ballet class, or if I'm still in ballet class, that actually gives me good posture, because that's what I do in my ballet class, so that's my habit. If you've not done ballet before, or it's not something that you do on a regular basis, or you haven't done it since you were a child, it probably actually feels quite uncomfortable to turn the legs out in the hip socket. But notice what is the result in the rest of the body. And then let's walk on the outside edge of the feet. So they're quite parallel. You have to sort of bend your knees a little bit. You make quite small steps. I find myself sticking my bottom out. It reminds me a little bit of an ape or something, or a gorilla. I've got all my toes off, apart from my little toes, the outside edge of my feet. Again, everything's sort of imploding a little bit. Shoulders are rounding inwards, backs of the arms are reaching forwards. And now let's go to the inside edge of your feet. And this is almost worse, actually, almost worse than that last one. You wouldn't have thought it was possible. So I've only got my big toe edge of my feet on the floor. I'm going sideways to show you from the front. But if I walk forwards and backwards, again, very small steps. This makes me want to round my arms in even more, actually. It's even more imploding into the centre. Then let's walk on our heels, so pulling the whole of the front of the foot up, maybe a little bit uncomfortable on your heel, hopefully not. It makes me very aware of my shins. And then the last one is up on your tippy toes, but walk backwards. So you should be safe, feel safe in your space, keep your eyeline up, just turning around. If you've got a yoga mat, it's quite handy because you can sort of go back and forwards on that yoga mat. Makes me lengthen my spine, which I quite like. It's a little bit like the ballet, the turnout in the ballet. Whoops, I'm going forwards and I'm not concentrating very well. But actually walking backwards on your toes will just fire up And we'll just connect with slightly different muscles to the ones we're used to, and that's all I'm asking for, is just an awareness of what's going on in those feet and how it will affect our overall gait and our overall posture, which is everything that we're doing today. Great, okay, let's come back to standing, facing forwards, hip width apart, nice and parallel with those feet, and then just letting the arms hang, lightly touching the fingertips to the thighs, and keeping the shoulders nice and still. Maybe close your eyes, there's the first rhyme of class. And we're going to draw a circle with your nose. The circle is in front of your face, and it's about the width of your face. And if you close your eyes, you'll just have a little bit more awareness of what's going on in the neck. There might be squelching, there might be crunching, there might be clicking and clunking. All fairly normal. Hopefully nothing too uncomfortable. If anything is uncomfortable, then just stop doing it. Let's change the shape. So we've drawn a circle, the width of the face. Let's draw a figure of 8, but it's lying on its side, and it's a very slim figure of 8. It's like it's been squished, almost like an infinity sign. So as we draw this figure of 8, the centre of it is in the centre opposite your spine. Because it's slim and it's on its side, we're turning the head from side to side. When you've done 4 or 5 in one direction, change to the other direction, which is always a little bit weird. And observing, how does that feel in your body? Are there tight areas? Last shape to think about, a figure of 8, but a nice fat, equal, rounded one, and a nice upright one. So we're going to draw equal, nice, round circles, one on top of the other, in front of your face. So now the movement of your head will be a little bit more up and down as opposed to side. Changing direction. With your fingertips, with your arms touching your legs, are you noticing any movement there? Hopefully not. Hopefully the shoulders are staying nice and relaxed and still. I'm thinking about lengthening the spine, keeping that head lifted off of the shoulders. Wonderful. Okay, drawing all of that. Great. Let's put the hands on the shoulders. So we're going to be thinking about neck placement. That's a very important part of our posture. But also the rib placement and the whole spine in a moment. We'll come to the spine. But let's just mobilise the neck a little bit. Let's mobilise the rib cage. Pop your hands on your shoulders. And I'm going to turn sideways just so that you can see a bit easier. Bringing your elbows forwards, pushing the rib cage back, and then opening up the chest and shifting your rib cage forwards. So rib cage goes back, rib cage goes forwards. When I take my ribs back, I slightly bend my knees and I slightly tuck under in the pelvis, but that's not my main focus. My main focus is shifting my rib cage front to back. And you can see on my plain wall how much I'm getting my ribs to move forwards and backwards. And that's what we're after, that's the focus here. And in one of the books I've been looking at recently, they call this a bit of a reset. And the idea is that we're moving to the extremes of so we're going to the one end and the other of the range of movement of the rib cage, for instance, in this position. And then so that when we settle, generally, rather than being here, we're a little bit more comfortable, slightly more opened at the front of the chest, because we've gone to the extremes and we're a bit more comfortable in the middle. If you never go here to these extremes, you'll never be able to get out of that sort of fixed position, which is what we always end up in. Great, okay, let's cross the elbows over if you can, and then wrap the arms around your shoulders like you're trying to give yourself a little bit of a hug. Let's all give ourselves a bit of a hug, a nice thing to do anyway. Thumbs are up to the ceiling, and you're just making contact there. Rest your arms on your chest, and then maybe take those feet a little bit wider, and then let's circle around. Keep it quite small. It should feel relatively pleasant, not too uncomfortable. So again, we're trying to just take that rib cage spine, so our rib cage spine, our tightest area of our spine. So change direction if you haven't already, then swap your arms over to your non-natural way, and again it will feel quite slightly different. You'll just get reaching other parts. We're taking this ribcage spine into movements which don't normally happen. So another type of reset, another type of just mobilising, stretching, getting some blood flow, waking up the fascia, the connective tissue. Brilliant. Last thing is just to draw a big circle with your elbows. So maybe release the grip a little bit and circle them around, drawing a circle in front of you, as big or as little as you want to. I'm letting everything else sort of go with it, joining in. I've got a lozenge stuck at the side of my mouth in case I start coughing. Great, okay, well done. That should feel quite nice. Perfect. So we've sort of we haven't reset anything. Well, no, we have reset a little bit. Sorry, we've reset the ribs. We've thought about mobilising the neck. So when we talk about good posture, we want a neutral spine. We want a lengthened spine and neutral spine. We want that spine to be in its natural shape. Mainly that comes from the pelvis being in a neutral position as well. So let's just think about, I'm going to turn sideways, but stay where you are, slightly softening the knees. Imagine your plumb line from the side of the body, from your earlobe through the front of your shoulder, down the side seam of your top, side seam of your, excuse me, your leggings if you had some, or just falls just in front of that ankle bone. That's a straight line, but we've got the natural curves. The natural curve at the nape of the neck, the natural curve of the ribs, the natural curve in the lower back. All of that's already there, but that's when we're in a neutral anyway. Then let's look at the pelvis, so slightly soften the knees. One hand in front, one hand behind. Tuck the pelvis under as much as you can. So I'm really scooping my tummy here. I'm really drawing in. And then I'm coming back to a neutral position, and then I'm going to overarch my lower back. If either of these movements cause you pain, then please don't do it. But if you can, again, try and go to the end ranges of your movement in this particular instance. It's a little bit harder if you keep the legs straight. Well, if you keep the legs straight, there won't be as much movement. You can, there is a movement, but it's a little bit more difficult. So that's why I'm softening the knees. The neutral position, imagine your leggings, trousers are a bucket full of water, absolutely full to the brim. When you're in neutral, you're not losing any water out of the bucket. So hip bones and pubic bone are actually perpendicular to each other. Otherwise we're arching and tucking under, arching and tucking under. Great, and then we just want to find that neutral position. So you may or may not know, the reason I'm doing this class this evening is because I've tested positive for COVID last week, end of last week, and so I've been a little bit unwell, not too bad, but coughing quite a lot. But when I was coughing, I realised how much you use your abdominals and you brace when you cough. So bracing and coughing basically is bracing. So I want you to try and set up that bracing system in your torso. So spreading fingers and thumbs far apart. Pop your thumbs on your lower ribs and see if you can get your little fingers to touch your hip bones. Lengthen the spine, so we're back into our neutral spine, neutral pelvis. Take a nice deep breath in. As you take your breath in, hopefully you'll feel your rib cage expand a little bit. And then when you breathe out, you hopefully will feel that rib cage drawing down towards your belly button as you breathe out. But then once we've set these muscles, we're going to just keep them switched on. Lift the pelvic floor inwards, internally, inwards and upwards, so that you've sort of braced your abdominal wall. And then hold that there. I'm going to turn sideways, feet are hip width apart again, nice and parallel. And then we're just going to send the bottom back and come upright. So we're maintaining our neutral spine. We're hinging at the hips. My weight is going onto my heels, so much so that I fell slightly backwards there, which is absolutely fine. Knees are slightly soft. If your knees are completely locked out, that won't work. And also it's not a bend, it's not a squat, it's just sending the bottom back. The most important part of this, and something I noticed this morning in class as well, was the neck position. So keep that eye line absolutely level when we're standing in good posture. The eye line lowers as your head lowers. If you leave your eye line in the same place, you're going to get wrinkles at the back of the neck, and you're basically doing that. Keep the whole length of the spine in place and feel like you've got this bracing feeling. Actually, just come back to being upright for a moment. I've slightly lost my train of thought there. So one thing I wanted you to think about, when you set everything up, so go back to just your hands being on your torso. You're standing tall, but you're not working overly hard. And then connect the rib cage. Lift the pelvic floor. Feel like I'm in the room next to you and I'm trying to push you. I'm standing at your right shoulder and I'm trying to push you over to the left. And you're resisting that. Resist. Switch everything on. It's like a set of fairy lights being switched on around your torso. Notice whether you can feel any other muscular activation. So I've already mentioned rib cage, pelvic floor lifting. I find that I push down into the floor a little bit. I'm pushing straight down, and then I find that there's a bit of an activation around my outside hips, just sort of here. Some people felt a little bit of an activation at the front of the thighs as well. So those are also areas that we want to work on when we're thinking about our posture, when we're thinking about maintaining that overall good alignment and that neutral spine and staying nice and strong there. Perfect. Okay, we are going to have the feet shoulder width apart. We're reaching both arms up. We're going to reach up one side and at the same time push down into the floor on the other side, keeping both arms up, just to stretch the side seam of your torso. Again, something we don't do enough in everyday life. It's another reset. Excuse me, helping to lengthen out the back. Great, and let's lower the arms down by your side, or down to parallel to the floor, and then let's go up and over for some nice side bends. So really imagining that you're stretching that side seam of your top. Brilliant. So mobilising, resetting, stretching out the sides of the back, the sides of the torso. We're going to move on from here, but just watch me a moment. We're going to take a nice side bend, then you're going to bend your knees and relax down to the floor. Once you get to here, I'm going to turn sideways. I want you to come up in a very specific way. So you're just hanging from your waist. The first thing I want to see is the back of the head and neck, and maybe the shoulders lifting up a little bit. It's not that. I don't want you to look forwards, because that is that, essentially. So from here, head is relaxed, knees are bent. I'm lifting the back of the head and neck. I'm lifting the shoulders up a little bit. Then I'm lifting my back even more. Now I'm in a neutral. Now I'm going to straighten my legs and drive my hips forwards. Just watch one more time. So we're going to go side bend first. This is me doing the other side. So I'm really sideways. When I bend my knees, I just let that upper back reach towards the corner and then relax in the middle. 3 stages, 3 stages. Back of head and neck, shoulders and hips, shoulders and spine into a neutral, so like a squat position, and then straighten the legs and drive forwards. Here we go. So shoulder width apart, just inside the shoulders. In fact, I'm going to stay sideways, I think. So taking one arm up, reaching over to the side, bend the knees, relax all the way down. Without holding it for too long, but try and think about those 3 stages. Back of head and neck, shoulders, spine is in its neutral, and then we're straightening. Other arm up and over to the side. Lengthen that top arm. Relax and bend. Hang in the middle, back of head and neck, shoulders, drive the hips forwards to come up. I'm going to do 2 more. I'm going to face forwards this time. So over to one side, bend the knees, relax all the way down. Remember, when you do that first bit with the head, I'm still looking down at the floor. I'm not looking forwards at the screen. Shoulders into like a squat position and then driving the hips forwards. Last one, up and over, stretch and relax. Back of head and neck, shoulders into a squat position, drive the hips forwards. Wonderful. Okay, coming into a sumo squat position. So maybe a little bit wider with the feet, bend the knees. Fingertips are facing in, elbows are facing out. I'm going to turn sideways, but I'm just looking in the monitor as I can see myself that I've got good symmetry. So I'm not slightly over to one side or the other. I haven't got one foot going slightly out. Everything's nice and symmetrical, and I'm braced and I'm feeling comfortable here. From the side, I'm going to go this side for a change. We're going to come into that position. I call this the sumo squat position, and then all I want you to do from here is take that pelvic tilt again. So tuck the pelvis under as much as you can and then let it release. I'm going to tuck my t-shirt into my leggings. It's probably not the best look, but anyway. So we're there. I'm thinking about sending my tailbone down and under, scooping my tummy. My upper back is rounding, but I'm not forcing it. I'm not overthinking about that. I'm just really trying to get as much tuck under as I can, and then releasing. Tucking under and release. Tuck under and release. So thinking about how we were doing this when we were standing, with the feet narrower and the knees slightly bent, same thing. There's more, so this is more isolating when we're standing, and I can see it now. I've tucked my t-shirt in as well. This one, I'm truly isolating my pelvis here. When you're in this position, to go as much as you can, the upper back has to join in, and that's fine. Just heightening your awareness, making sure that you're drawing the belly button in, lifting pelvic floor to make that happen. Wonderful. We are going to go into some, let's start with the feet together. We're just going to take a single leg knee fold and lift the leg so it's opposite your hip, and then place it down and swap to the other side. So one of my concepts I always talk about is having a tissue box. So the tissue box is your 2 shoulders and your 2 hips, and even though we're standing on one leg, that tissue box is staying nice and pristine. So there's no change, there's no shortening, there's no twisting, there's no pulling back anywhere. And then what I'd like you to do is lift one leg. I'm going to turn sideways. Lifting one leg, keeping that tissue box pristine. Place both hands on top of that knee and push the leg down at the same time as pulling the leg up, and then replace, swap sides. Push and pull and replace. Push and pull. What we're looking for, and I'm not sure how well I'm doing this because when I turn my head I can't quite see it, but what we're looking for is no change again to that tissue box. Excuse me. I'm going to try and keep my shoulders square and also keep this knee opposite my hip. So try not to let the knee come across to the centre. Relatively easy because we're going from a narrow base, so we haven't got to shift too much with the weight. And then let's finish off with 2 more. Hold it for a little bit longer this time. Notice where you're feeling it. Hopefully you'll have better balance than me. So you could go next to a wall for this as well, and maybe have your elbow touching the wall, or one hand on the wall is absolutely fine. or the back of a chair or something. So I'm feeling it in my hip, so we're looking at stabilising the hip. I'm feeling it in the standing leg buttock. I'm feeling that my abdominals are switching on and bracing. I'm feeling it in my shoulders and neck because I'm pushing down. Everything's all connected, and swapping sides. One last time. For the moment, we are going to return to this movement. Noticing for yourself as well, is this easier for you or is this worse? Pushing down, quite hard work. Standing leg is wobbling around a little bit, absolutely fine. Trying to find that centre of gravity. Wonderful. Okay, let's take some stretches. Let's come back to our sumo squat. So maybe go a little bit wider than we just were. Maybe turn those toes out a little bit. All the way down here. Fingertips facing in, or fingers facing in I should say, elbows out, and then from there just relax all the way down. Let the head hang, and then we're going to straighten the legs and bend the knees. And straighten the legs and bend the knees. And actually when I came into my hamstring stretches then, which is what we're trying to do here, I made my feet parallel again. You can do your hamstring stretches turned out slightly in the legs, but I'd prefer it if you were parallel. Work out what that shadow is on my. Can work out what that bit was. That's on top of my head, my hair. Okay, great. From here, if you can, and if this is too much, just do what you can with those hamstrings. But if you can, take the feet out much wider. Really do turn the toes out to the corners of your mat this time. You're going to bend one knee, you're going to go from side to side. It's called a Cossack squat. It's a strong stretch on the legs. You're making sure that the knee goes over your toes. It's going out to the corner. My weight is on my hands. If you needed to, I'm using this, you probably haven't got a puff handy, but I have today, but you could be on the edge of the settee or a chair, use the chair seat just to give yourself a little bit more support as you go from side to side. Equally, for this one, if you wanted to make it harder, you could take the assistance away. So you're really just going through those legs from side to side. And that's quite strong. Great. We're going to walk the feet in. Heels and toes and heels and toes. Bend the knees, roll up through the spine, tucking that pelvis under. Wonderful. Moving on. I'm going to turn my heater off. Suddenly got quite hot. Okay, we're going to go into some shoelace lunges. To get down to the floor, I'm not going to do too many of these. But I want you to think about from standing on sideways, we're basically taking one leg back. I want you to think about the shape of the back, trying to maintain a nice neutral spine as opposed to this position. So we're hinging at the hip, we're taking the chest over the thighs. You can put that knee down if you want to, if you need to. Otherwise, just hover the knee slightly, step forwards and up out of it, and then change sides. This is quite strong. Again, there might be an easier alternative whereby you don't go quite so low. For this one, you stay a little bit more upright, but try and think about maintaining a neutral spine. Just a few of these, noticing the strength required in the legs, the buttocks to come up to stand. It's strong work. Adding on from here, if you would like to, we're going to step back. I'm going to take my furthest leg away first, so that I'm going to rotate and face you, but watch me a moment. So I'm taking the back leg back, down to the floor, then I'm lifting my chest. My back knee is hovering off the floor. I'm going to take my arms up to the ceiling. Arms are up by my ears, my spine is nice and upright. I'm tucking my pelvis under so that I'm getting a stretch at the front of the hips Then I'm going to lower my arms to shoulder height, turn towards that front leg. I just noticed that my front knee was opening out then as well. Try and keep it absolutely square. This is strong. Then we're going to face forwards again. You're going to step onto that front leg, and the grand finale of this is to carry on, come up on that one leg and push that knee down again. It's strong. We're only going to do about 4 of them, but try and do them well. If that's too much for you, maybe practice some squats. Anything on 2 legs is absolutely fine rather than the 1 leg stuff. So I'm going to do the same leg again. So back leg, because then you're going to turn towards me if you're sideways on. So taking the back leg back, trying to keep that spine fairly upright. It's not completely upright, but equally don't be in a Quasimodo position. Lift the chest, take those arms up by your ears. Yes, imagine you're a nice straight tube going all the way up to the ceiling. Turn your palms down, turn your shoulders, keep those legs facing forwards, hips facing forwards. Upper body has completely rotated. It's strong. Face forwards. Step onto that front leg if you can. Have a little bit of support if you need it. Push the leg down, pull the leg up, brace everything. Have a little before you change. Let's swap legs. Taking the other leg back. Hinge at the hip. I'm not actually doing that bit very well today, I don't know why. Then lift your back up. Lift your arms up. Tuck under that pelvis. With the pelvis, you should be feeling a good stretch here. And if you're not, make it happen by tucking the pelvis under. Then I'm turning the palms. I'm turning my body away from the camera. Upper body is in the opposite direction, or at right angles to the lower body. Ooh, and then we're facing forwards. I'm going to put all my weight through that front leg, lifting the leg up, pushing down with both hands, thinking about tissue box. The tissue box is nice and square again, straightening that standing leg if you can. 2 more, stepping back. I'm going to do this a bit better this time. I'm going to think about hinging at the hip, sending my leg back, keeping my chest nice and lifted, keeping the shoulders lifted, keeping the back of the neck long. Then I'm lifting up, arms are up. Tuck that pelvis under, turn your palms, turn your shoulders. Getting a little bit out of breath now. Facing forwards, pitching forwards onto that one leg. This is all quite strong. You might know about this tomorrow. Placing that foot down. One last one, here we go. Hinging at the hip, sending the leg back. Fingertips to the floor, almost like a sprinter's position. Then lift the chest. Front of my hips are very tight. I really feel this stretch. So we're here. Arms are up by the ears if you can. Shoulders are down, neck is long. Turn the palms, turn your upper body. Breathe. Square everything up to the front again, upper body wise. Pitch forwards. Ooh, lift that leg, push it down and away. Hold it for a moment. A little extra bonus of an ankle twiddle there as well. Wonderful. Great job. We are coming down to the floor. I'm going to lower my monitors and we're going to be down on all fours when we get to the floor. Hands underneath the shoulders. Knees underneath your hips. Knees hip width apart, hands shoulder width apart. We're going to take some spine circles. So this is a movement again, mobilising the rib cage spine, the whole spine actually. You're going to shift your ribs to one side, you're going to lift them up, you're going to shift them to the other side, you're going to let them swing down. Side, up, side, swing down, side, up, side, swing. So notice I'm not bending my arms. So it's like your arms and your legs are pillars and your torso is taking a nice rounded, a circular movement. It's a spine circle in the framework of the arms and the legs. Wonderful. So just to mobilise everything. Great. From there, keep the hands where they are. Bring your feet and knees together. Pick your feet up if you can, as long as it's not uncomfortable on your knees. This is slightly different. This is called wagging the tail. You're basically going to take your knees, no, not your knees, your feet from side to side, and your goal now is to shorten one side of your spine. As you shorten one side of your, not your spine, your torso, so the side seam of your body, think about lengthening the other side in a sort of curve, if that makes sense. So yes, I'm shortening my right side now, and I'm sort of tempted to look at my feet, which is why it's called wagging the tail, and then I'm pushing the other side out. Great, well done. Okay, that's called wagging the tail. It can be done, you can do the same thing static with the feet and knees, not quite, you don't get quite as much movement there. Brilliant, okay, coming down onto your elbows. Now I have to work really hard on this next one. We're looking at hip stability, but also glutes, back of the leg firing up. The back line of the body is actually really important for our postural stability. This time bring your feet and knees together. I'm going to stay sideways on as much as possible. I'm going to start with my left leg, the leg that's closest to the camera. From this position, so my elbows are underneath my shoulders, my knees are underneath my hips, feet and knees together, remember. I'm going to flex my foot and take my leg at a 90-degree angle up towards the ceiling. But what I have to be really careful here is that my knee wants to do that. My leg wants to rotate in the hip socket. So I really have to try and keep it parallel. Also, what I want you to be very aware of is your hips staying level with each other. So just check that out for a moment. Take that knee down and up a couple of times. The other thing that we're looking for, we're hoping to happen, is no change in your lower back. So it's not this. There's no collapsing and changing of your pelvis. Your pelvis stays absolutely still. When you're happy that there's no change here, draw the knee in and now start to extend the leg out and keep it nice and straight when you extend, foot flexed and parallel as well. I'm dropping my head down, but I can see. Again, my leg will quite happily want to turn out in the hip. I can keep my hip still, but still turn the leg out. That's not what we're after. We're after parallel position here. So drawing the knee in, stretching it away, pushing through that heel, keeping the neck long. Remember, we don't want you to looking up, we want you looking down. I'm actually looking sort of level with my elbows onto the floor. Trying not to lean away from that working side, that moving side. Buttocks should be feeling a little bit of work on that side now. Let's swap sides. So knees together, reset yourself a moment. Always one side feels slightly different to the other. Release the leg, lift it up, bring it back down again. Notice that nothing should really change. You'll feel more pressure on the same side elbow as the leg that you're lifting. Then double check those hips. Double check you're not leaning away from that side. Keeping everything parallel, and then we're straightening that leg out. Again, I have to double check that I'm parallel. I have to double check that my hip's not lifting. And starting to shake already on this side, which is quite interesting. So this is definitely my weaker side for my glutes, but also because I've been a little bit unwell the last couple of days, I can really feel that just a lack of stamina and endurance from where I normally am. So listen to your body. Notice how,
when you're used to being able to do things really well and you're quite fit and strong, how when you get an illness, especially a virus, the virus really takes it out of you. We don't realise it, how much it takes it out of you. So be kind to your body.
Ooh, okay, I've had enough of that one. Big toes together, open up the knees nice and wide, stretch your arms forwards, hands as wide as the yoga mat, and then just take a slightly mad sway from side to side, just to release the tension in those shoulders, hips a little bit. I'm allowing my hips to sway from side to side as well. Wonderful. And then let's come on to our backs. So we're going to lie down on our backs. I'm going to slightly angle my mat actually. And in order to get down to the floor, let's have feet and knees hip width apart, hands underneath the backs of the knees, and if you can, taking a roll down to get down to the floor. So we're tucking that pelvis under. There's that movement again. We use it all the time in Pilates. Really do. So really tuck that pelvis under, then try and control each vertebrae one at a time, and then allowing yourself, I'm surprised, this is probably where I'm going to start coughing because I'm laying on my back, but allowing yourself to notice your spine, allow your spine to settle on the mat. So legs are bent, feet and knees are hip width apart. Just close your eyes a moment, think about the natural curves that are going on, the natural curves we thought about when we were standing, when we were looking at that plumb line. So the plumb line now, you could say, is the straight line of the floor. And then think about the curves that we identified when we were standing. So we had the curve at the nape of the neck. We've got the curve of the rib cage, which shows itself when we've come into a flat line with the ribs at the front flaring maybe a little bit more. We've got the curve in the lower back. Otherwise, you want to be quite equally weighted and quite heavy with all of those, all of the contact that you have on the floor. Think about whether all of the ribs at the back are actually touching the floor, or whether you're slightly lifted. So for me, if I've got not necessarily stress, but if I've been working quite hard, which I am doing today, I feel like I am. I feel like my back is a bit overarched, so I feel like my ribs are flaring more than they should be. And actually I feel like my ribs at the back are only in contact down to my bra strap, and then below the bra strap, and there's another 3 or 4 inches of ribs to go. They're lifted off because I'm holding tension there. So I'm going to try and see if I can just let them go a little bit. That's better. And then you'll notice, hopefully, that the ribs at the front will have just softened and relaxed a little bit. And then the curve in your lower back should feel like it's opposite your belly button, not up underneath your rib cage. So just nice and heavy in the floor. And then all we're going to do from here is take a pelvic tilt so that you're tucking the pelvis under. You're pushing your lower back curve into the mat, into the floor for all your worth, and then you're rolling back to neutral. We could go the other way and we could overarch, but I feel like there's no need to do that, and that just helps to exaggerate that upper back curve, which we don't want. This brings that tension back. So let's just go from a nice neutral, pubic bone, hip bones on the same plane. Lift the pelvic floor, draw the belly button tightly back towards the spine, push that waistband, push the deepest part of your lower back curve into the mat, hold it there, try and apply pressure. Notice, are those buttocks joining in? They should not be. Even my feet, I haven't actually pushed my feet into the floor too much. My feet are quite light. I want to get this, all this internal stabilising, all these smaller muscles around my pelvis. That needs to be my anchor, my point of stability, not using the floor in this position.
Sometimes we do, but right now I want you to just try and really switch on that lower abdominal section. So tucking under, and notice as you do this, so hold it for a count of 2 at least. Each time you do it, is there other things going on? Is your chin lifting slightly every time? Are you shifting your body along the mat a little bit? It will just be very subtle. Is your rib cage joining in some way or the other? Are you tending to scoop and sort of suck in under that rib cage, or is it nice and relaxed and staying exactly where it is? So what I'm asking you to do is truly isolate that pelvis, not join in with the rest of the body. Try not to let the rest of the body compensate. And then let's just finish off this section with holding that there. Holding it for as long as you can. Keep trying to apply that pressure. The curve, the deepest part of the curve of your lower back, so that waistband pushing into the mat, pushing into the floor. A Pilates 10. When we're in a neutral, there's no pressure there at all. Now you're pushing into 10. 10 is maximum. 10 out of 10. Really try and hold it there. This is a little bit like when you try and lift your pelvic floor all the way up to the top floor, up to the executive suite. And as much as you try and hold it there, if there's no stamina, it starts to collapse, starts to crumble. So try not to let that, but notice it if it's happening. It just means you haven't got much stamina or much endurance in these muscles. So that's what we're trying to work on here. And then relax and release. Great, let's take the same sort of thing, that subtle movement with your head by tucking your chin in. Now this is really difficult to talk when I do this. So I'm trying to tuck my chin in. I'm trying to lengthen the back of my neck. I'm trying to push the nape of the neck curve into the floor, but it won't go. It won't make contact with the floor. Pretty sure it won't. But I'm just trying to activate those deep neck flexors. And again, notice what compensation is happening here. So as I do that, as I tuck my chin in, I can feel my rib cage flaring. So this action is making me compensate here because it's all a little bit tight. The other thing that can happen is the shoulders, the ends of your shoulder tips rounding forwards. I'm exaggerating the movements now. So see if you can relax collarbone, make it nice and broad and open. The backs of the hands on the floor helps with that. And see if you can keep that rib cage heavy and relaxed, so that it's not joining in. I can't actually hold my chin down and talk, but that's what I'd like you to do next. Try and hold that chin tucked in. So this is more subtle. I'm going to have to release my neck. In fact, I'm going to have to sit up for the moment. That's much more subtle than the pelvic tilt. So when you take the pelvic tilt, you can apply pressure into the floor. You can't apply pressure here because the nape of your neck isn't going to make contact with the floor. It's just a case of lengthening. When I was working at the chiropractic college, we used to put a blood pressure cuff or a cuff filled with air with a dial on it in the nape of the neck, and you had to push your chin in and apply pressure, but it was much more subtle than what we're trying to do now, and hold that pressure there. Same sort of thing. We just want to build the endurance in the deep neck flexors so that we stop the forward head carriage that we've all got, our modern day life. Great. Okay, well done. How are we doing for time? Ooh, nearly time. Where does the time go when you're enjoying yourselves? Okay, let's take a hollow body hold. So this is really quite interesting as a concept. I'm going to take my hand out for a moment. So, lie with your arms down by your sides, straighten out your legs. Take that pelvic tilt that we were doing. So tuck the pelvis under. Again, you'll notice the same as when we were standing. When the legs are straight, it's really quite difficult to do this movement. It doesn't happen very naturally. But I'd like you to try and take that pelvic tilt, really scoop that tummy out, push the lower back into the floor. Reach your arms along the floor, tuck your chin in, lift your head, reach your fingertips towards your feet, lift your head and shoulders, keep that pelvic tilt going, rib cage is strongly connected, bring your legs together, squeeze them together, and then lift the legs off a little bit. And hold. No, I'm not gonna point my feet. Oh, yes, and that's really strong. And then collapse and relax a little bit. So this is the second time I've done this today. I'm finding myself a little bit worn out. I'm going to do one more. So tuck the pelvis under. So this is our hollow body hold. This is the start of hollow body hold. It's easy for me to say. Tuck the pelvis under, tuck the chin in, reach the arms forwards, like your 100 position with the arms. Squeeze the legs together. Hold the legs off the floor a little bit. You could maybe lift them up a little bit higher. Actually, no, lifting them up higher makes it worse, I think. Squeeze the legs together, hold that there, and should have felt some good work going on there. But if you didn't, here's another exercise. One last exercise on those abdominals. With that same sense of hollow body hold, that same pelvic tilt, that same activating those deep lower abdominals. Both legs up and in, back is rounded, pulling my knees in, hanging onto my knees so that I can keep my head lifted. I'm strongly tucking my pelvis under. I'm strongly pushing my lower back into the floor as much as I did earlier. And then I'm going to extend one leg. We're just going to take single leg stretch, but keeping this pelvic tilt. You're going to be in a pelvic tilt anyway, but make it work even more. I'm so scooping my tummy. I'm so going to deserve my dinner when I finish this. Remember that tucking that pelvis under, scooping that tummy makes us really hungry. I'm hanging onto my leg for dear life. As I swap my legs over, I pull the knee in towards my shoulder, my upper body doesn't change. Keeping the chin tucked in, keeping my head above my shoulders. It's not back here. That would be really horrible on the neck. Do a few more if you can. When you would like to stop, try 4 more. 3, 2, 1. Oh, la 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 la. And rest your head down, cross your ankles over. Roll the head from side to side, release the tension in the neck. Yes, it is uncomfortable, the head is really heavy, and we've also been working on those deep neck flexors, all part of the same stamina building movements. Good job. We have got 2 more positions. We're going to line our side quickly in a nice straight line. So lining yourself up with the back of the mat if you can. Go up a little bit higher. Pushing down on that underneath side so that your waist is lifted, so I'm only making contact at my shoulder and my hip. Everything else is lifted off of the floor. Rib cage is connected. Lifting both legs up, flex both feet. Hold the top leg still. Lower the underneath leg. Point the foot, lift it, flex it, lower it. Point and lift, flex and lower. Point and lift, flex and lower. So we're working inside thigh of that underneath leg. Keeping the ribs lifted. Working the ankle, working in parallel. My ankle is clicking away like a good one every time I point my foot. Holding those legs up there, holding the legs together. If you can, placing the arm along the side into marching feet. Oh, I think my ankle nearly dropped off then. Flexing one foot, pointing the other. If you get a bit necky for this one, turn your head towards the floor. Hips are stacked, shoulders are stacked, waist is lifted. Oh my. Bending the knees, sitting yourself up, swapping over to the other side. Nice straight line if you can. Flexing the feet, lifting the legs up, so nice and parallel, insteps together. Top leg is level with your top hip, waist is lifted, no contact here at all. I can feel all the way up to my shoulder blade, side of my shoulder blade. Underneath leg, flexes to lower, points to lift. Should be quite hard work to lift and lower. A light fingertip touch, hopefully, as opposed to a white knuckle ride. I'm a little bit more balanced on this side. Always one side better than the other for that. Making sure hips are stacked, whoops, shoulders are stacked. Feet stay parallel, no rotation, legs stay parallel, I should say, in the hips. Great, holding both legs up. Flexing one, pointing the other, placing that arm along the side if you can, keeping that waist lifted by pushing down, connecting rib cage to hips at the front. I'm locked in here, it's that bracing. It's all that coughing I've been doing has done me the world of good. Oh, my shins are feeling it today now as well. Wonderful. Bend those wrist legs down, bend the knees, sitting yourselves up. Great job. Last position is on your tummy. First thing we're going to do is the reverse of the hollow body hold. It's called a Superman. It's quite strong. So we're here. Arms are out in a V. Legs fairly close together. Tuck the pelvis under a little bit, push that pubic bone into the floor, squeeze so switch the buttocks on, squeeze the legs up into the air, pushing as I said, the pubic bone into the floor, and then we're lifting back of head and neck and arms and holding, and it's really quite strong. So the opposite shape, we're trying to create a gentle C curve in the torso and then lowering. I'm amazed I'm able to speak through that as well, but one last one if you can. So lifting the legs up, lifting that upper body up, keeping the shoulders down. Remember to keep the back of the neck nice and long. Whew. Oh, and relaxing down. Wonderful. Let's keep those legs hip width apart, nice and parallel. Bring the hands back underneath your shoulders. Let's come up through a Sphinx position, so up onto your elbows. You could just stay here if you wanted to. And we're trying to fold over at the bra strap areas. Again, it's that thoracic spine. Trying to get the opposite for our everyday posture. Opening up the chest and then coming back down again. Or we could lengthen all the way up and come all the way back down again. You don't have to straighten your arms if you don't want to. You could just go to wherever is comfortable. Make sure that pelvis excuse me, is supported. Tucking the pelvis under, so no sense of squishing in the lower back, a sense of lengthening out from the lower back. Wonderful. Last one, come up onto your hands, then onto your knees, bring your knees back, walk your knees forwards a little bit, so just as always a bit of moving around on the floor. Just go with whatever instinctively feels right for you. So today for me, I wanted to curl my toes under and push back into a deep squat. Have a little bit of move around on there. You could just curl the toes under, you could lift the hips, push back into a downward dog. You could have some walk arounds in your bear walks. You could do any of the above. You could come down to sit and roll onto your hips, roll onto your knees, have a little roll around full stop, have a little play, whatever you feel like doing. Well, thank you so much for joining me.